The Seattle Seahawks, a franchise defined for decades by grit, resilience, and their uncanny ability to reinvent themselves in the face of adversity, find themselves staring into the abyss after just 1 week of the new NFL season. A season that began with promise, hype, and an energized fan base, but has already been rocked to its core by the harsh realities of the league. And while week 1 against the San Francisco 49ers was supposed to be a measuring stick, a chance to prove to the football world that Mike McDonald's new era in Seattle could start with a statement, it instead left more questions than answers. Not only on the scoreboard, but in the training room, where injuries piled up and cast a long shadow over the months to come. And as we gather here on Seahawks Today, we must acknowledge that the tension is not only about a single loss, not only about falling short against a hated divisional rival, but about whether this roster is deep enough, tough enough, and prepared enough to survive the cruel math of NFL history. Because make no mistake, teams that start 0-2 rarely make the postseason. History slamming the door on nearly 90% of them. And Seattle is now walking that razor's edge, heading into a dangerous Week 2 showdown against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A team that smells blood and a franchise that has never been shy about delivering knockout blows when opponents stagger early, which makes the news about Nick Emenwaru all the more devastating because this was not supposed to be his story, not after the way he lit up the combine, not after the way he exploded onto draft boards with freakish speed, size, and athleticism, not after the way Seattle believed so strongly in him that they traded up in the second round to secure his services, envisioning him as the keystone of the big nickel package. McDonald wanted to deploy against the NFL's new generation of hybrid offenses, and yet in the cruelest twist imaginable. His debut lasted just 5 snaps, 5 tantalizing glimpses of what could be, including a rare tackle for loss against Christian McCaffrey, a player who makes all-pro defenders look foolish. But then came the awkward step, the rolled ankle, the grimace, the trainers surrounding him, and just like that, the Seahawks' blueprint for defensive versatility collapsed before our eyes. And if McDonald had walked into his Monday press conference smiling, reassuring the city that this was just a tweak, a minor setback, the storm might have calmed, but instead his words only fueled the suspense because week to week in NFL language rarely means good news. And whispers about injured reserve, about a potential month-long absence, about missing not 1 game but 4, about not returning until mid-October against Jacksonville began to circulate, and suddenly the season feels like it is being measured not in wins and losses, but in the speed of one man's recovery. Without him, the Seahawks' defense is not the same. Without him, the alignments shift, the backups are exposed, and the domino effect of weaknesses spreads. Because replacing him is not as simple as plugging another body into the lineup. Devin Witherspoon could move inside, yes, but that forces a chain reaction that leaves the outside corner vulnerable. And Reek Woolen, once hailed as a gem, looked like a liability against the 49ers, beaten in crucial moments, hesitant in coverage, and stripped of the confidence that once defined him, while Josh Eojob, who quietly earned his stripes in camp, is solid but unproven under the bright lights. And then there is Tayoka, who filled in but was left chasing McCaffrey in space, a task that exposed his limitations and left fans wondering whether Seattle has the personnel at all to mask this glaring absence. And so the suspense builds. Will Emenwaru be sidelined for a month? And if so, can Seattle survive a brutal gauntlet of games against Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, and Arizona before they see him again? Or will this season be defined by a cruel what if? Another year where injuries robbed Seattle of its identity. Yet just when the darkness feels total, a glimmer emerges because Uchenna Nwosu, the veteran edge rusher whose absence last year crippled the pass rush, is set to return. And while his presence cannot erase the sting of losing Emenwaru, it can steady the ship because Nwosu is more than a stat line. He is energy, leadership, and reliability. A player who has proven over and over that he can make not just sacks, but tone-setting tackles, drive-killing stops, and momentum-swinging plays. And pairing him with Boy Mayfair finally gives Seattle a tandem of edge threats capable of harassing quarterbacks and sealing the edge in the run game, which in turn can ease the strain on the secondary. Because if the pass rush arrives a half second faster, coverage mistakes matter less. And this is the balance Seattle must strike. Survive on defense until reinforcements arrive, bend but do not break, and hope that the offense can pick up the slack. But there too lies another subplot of suspense because the wide receiver room is limping into week 2 with more questions than answers. And while Jackson Smith and Jigba looked electric in week 1, carrying the passing attack almost single-handedly, the absence of Jake Bobo and Derek Young stripped Geno Smith of crucial options and left the offense one-dimensional, predictable, and easy to suffocate because Bobo, with his 604 frame and end zone efficiency, was supposed to be Seattle's red zone trump card, a mismatch nightmare for defensive backs. And yet he sits in concussion protocol, the timetable murky, the return unknowable as concussions refuse to follow schedules, sometimes vanishing in a week, sometimes haunting players for months. And until he is cleared, Seattle is deprived of a weapon they desperately need in close games where field goals aren't enough. While Young, the speed merchant with the ability to stretch defenses vertically, has been hampered by a hamstring injury, and without him, Seattle lacks a true deep threat, leaving defenses free to press up, choke short routes, and dare Geno to find answers he currently does not have. And so the offense sputters, the scoreboard stalls, and frustration grows. And here again, the weight of history presses down because 0-2 is more than a record. It is a curse, a label that signals doom in 9 of every 10 cases, a canyon few climb out of. And Seahawks fans know it, feel it, dread it, remembering the handful of teams that have beaten the odds. Last year's Bengals, a few rare exceptions. But also knowing how razor-thin the margins are in a league where health, depth, and luck matter as much as talent. And the whispers grow louder. What if this season, hailed as a rebirth, collapses before it even begins? What if McDonald's first year is defined not by schemes and culture, but by injuries and regrets? What if the Seahawks, once feared, once dominant, become just another franchise swallowed by mediocrity? Yet this is also where stories are written. Because football seasons are not made in the easy weeks, they are forged in the crucible of crisis. And if Seattle can go into Pittsburgh, steal a win in a hostile environment, and claw back to 1-1, everything changes. The narrative shifts, hope is reborn. But if they lose, if they stagger to 0-2, then every game becomes a mountain, every injury magnified, every mistake scrutinized, and the road to January football may close before September ends. So the suspense lingers, thick in the air, heavier than the fog that rolls in off Puget Sound. And Seahawks Nation waits, anxious, restless, desperate for clarity, desperate for heroes, desperate for answers to questions that only the next game can provide. Because this is the NFL at its cruelest and most captivating. A theater of uncertainty where the line between triumph and disaster is razor thin. And for Seattle, the curtain is about to rise on Act 2 of a season that already feels like a fight for survival.